Distinguished guests, parents, students, friends, media. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm not a good speaker, so please excuse me if my speech is not going to be good. And as you know, in racing, when you're about to start, everyone is very nervous. 99% of them is very nervous. But for me, I'm never nervous because I want to start and go and win. So I'm never nervous. But when I'm asked to do a speech, I'm very nervous. So please excuse me for that. I think you'll hear my story. So I was asked to give inspiration, to inspire the students today. So I'll give my story about my life story, and it might interest you, and someday it might help you in your life. So I was born in a small village in Kurunegala called Malagamuwa, as same as my surname. And I went to St. Anne's College in Kurunegala for grade 1, and from grade 2, I went to Trinity College, Kandy, where I was a boarded student. And I had 2 sisters, and my father was a very strict person. I hardly speak to him, or hardly speaks to me. But my mother was my best friend. And from my very younger days, my mother used to tell me, Puta, you have to become a doctor. So I asked her, why do I have to become a doctor? Then she always says, because only a doctor can save another person. So because I loved her so much, and she's my best friend up to date, and she has taught me the best things in life, so I thought I must fulfill my mother's dream. And I studied very well in school. Always I was first, second, third in the class. But I had a passion for these cars and bikes. So every time I come home for the holidays, when my father is asleep, with everyone we pushed the cars to the road, and I should drive until morning, until the petrol was over, but he couldn't find out who was driving the car. And I was around 8, 7 when I could drive and ride. So, but I wanted to fulfill my mother's dream, and I was studying very well. But at the age of 14, I saw this Hollywood movie, Silver Dream Racer. So after watching this movie, it inspired me to become a world champion. Actually, this story was about a racing rider who struggled very hard to become a champion. And you know, end of the story, he wins the race, but he crashes and he dies. So I thought to myself, I should continue this story because I have the passion for bikes and cars, and I thought, no, I'm going to become a racing champion. So I thought, I must fulfill my dream than fulfilling my mother's dream. So at the age of 15, my grandmother bought me a Honda CB50cc. She gave me as a present for doing my O-levels and passing the exams. So I did my first race with this bike when I was 16. So from Kurunegala, I rode this bike to Katukurunda, and I won the race. The first race I did, I won the race. And the day I was leaving Kurunegala, because my father didn't know I was going to race, so I knew I was going to get a good beating after the race. But when I left Kurunegala, when I was leaving, I knew I could win the first race. It was not a challenge for me. But my challenge was to go exceeding that. So I thought, I'm leaving Kurunegala today, but I'm going to win the world. So that's how I left Kurunegala. So anyway, I won the race, came back home, and I got a good beating from my father. And he said, you're not going to race anymore. And so during this race, so this novice race, it was the novices race, but I saw the cream of the race. The race of the day was this unlimited racing, which all these thoroughbreds, 250cc's, 350s, 500s competing with each other, the top riders in Sri Lanka. So soon after that, I thought I must ride a 350. So I must from 50cc go to the highest level in Sri Lanka, because I wanted not to win in Sri Lanka, but I wanted to go overseas as soon as possible. But I knew it was a difficult task to get to 350, but my 2 sisters were, they were so lovable, and they always support me. So I spoke to my 2 sisters and said, you have to get my father to buy me a 350. I know you all can. So anyway, for a few months they were bothering my father. At last, he had no option. He bought this bike for me. I was 16 plus. And he said, but if you ever have an accident, you are never going to ride again. You have to promise that. So I said, okay. It was a false promise, but at that time I had nothing else to do. So anyway, he bought this bike for me, and the first race was in Kurunegala. I was 17 plus, I was the youngest rider, And I was, in the first race I was able to finish third, and in the second race while I was trying to overtake the first guy, I had a big crash and I broke my leg, and my father said, "You're not going to race anymore." So I said, okay, but you know, on and off I used to race, and I was always waiting for a chance to go overseas. So one fine day, I think in 1983 when I was 19, I saw this paper advertisement calling for riders to make applications to go to India for the Grand Prix to represent Sri Lanka. So I made an application, which I had all the qualifications, but my application was turned down, and I think from Kurunegala I went to Colombo 14 times to get a entry, but they refused to do that. So anyway, I'm a person who never gives up in life, so I found out where this race was and who was organizing it. So it was Madras Motorsports Club. So I wrote to them. As you all know, at those days, the only way to communicate was a letter. So I sent them a letter, and they said, yes, with your experience you can come. The only problem is, because you are not officially represent the country, you have to find your own expenses to come to India. So I was thinking, my God, how am I going to ask my father about money going to India? So I was talking to my friends and I was asking, what is the easiest way to go to India? Then they said, you have to take a train from Kurunegala to Thalaimanna. From there you have to take a ferry to Rameshwaram, and from there you have to take a train again to Madras. So I thought, I am going to do it. So with two of my friends, I told my mother, because someone had to know I was leaving Sri Lanka, and never told my father. So with two of my friends, I had to get the visas, I had to get a carnet for the bike. So I did all that without my father's knowledge. And one fine day, a week before the race, I left Kurunegala around 5 o'clock in the morning, took the train to Ralimanna, took the ferry to Rameshwaram, and then again a train to Madras. So I went to Madras, I was so happy, and I didn't have money to stay in a hotel, so we stayed at the Mahabodhi temple. The priest was very generous to give us, they gave us everything, food, lodging, everything. And so I went for the race. Soon after qualifying, so I was so thrilled, so happy, because I wanted to race internationally. So when I went to the race, soon after qualifying, the president of that club came to me and said, his name was Mr. Chandok, he came to me and said, "Son, I'm very sorry, tomorrow I can't allow you to take part in the race." So I said, "Why, sir?" Then he said, "You are Sri Lankan officials," it's very sad today, but I think still these things happen in our country. The Sri Lankan officials have said that if we allow you to take part in this race, they will never ever send official riders in the future. So I said, "You can't do that, you have to let me ride." He said, "No, sir, I'm very sorry. I would love to see you, you're the youngest rider." So I was not allowed to take part. So I was really crying, I was by the bike and I was crying because this was my dream. So then there was this Sri Lankan driver, Mr. Amadasiri. I never met him before. He came to me and he asked, "Malli Mogadar," so he said, "Why are you crying?" So I said, "They didn't allow me to ride." So he said, "This is a usual thing, but I can help you. Next week there's a race in Calcutta and I can get you to go there and I'll get you entry." So I said, "That's perfect." So he took me to the president of the Calcutta Motorsports Club, who came to witness the Madras races. And so they said, "Okay, you can come to Calcutta, but you have to find your own expenses, and then we will give you an entry. And if you start the race, there was a thing called start money. So when you start, you get about 5,000 Indian rupees." So I didn't have money to go to Calcutta, so I sold my watch, and we took the slowest train, which took almost 38 hours from Madras to Calcutta, and we went there, and then the priest introduced me to stay at the same temple, Mahabodhi in Calcutta. So we stayed there, and I did the race, and I finished 6th in the race. And the winner of this race was a Japanese champion, so his name was Matsumoto Kemme. So they were all fooling with me because I was the youngest rider, I had the oldest bike. So, but I don't know, for some reason, he used to always come and talk with me, and he came to me and said, "What are you trying to do? You are riding a bike 10 years older than us, and you're trying to beat us?" So I said, "Not today," but I said, "Very finely, I'm going to beat all of you." So he was very friendly, and then I said, "I'm going to become a world champion." So he asked me, "How are you going to do that?" So I said, "I'm going to leave Sri Lanka soon, I'm going to go to Europe or to US, because I didn't know anything about Japan, and I said, I will somehow become a champion." Then he said, "Dilantha, the best place for motorcycle riding is Japan, because we have almost 16 circuits, you should come to Japan without going to US or to Europe. I said, fine, definitely. Will you help me? He said, yes. And he gave me his address. And my father came to know I was in India. He came there and he dragged me back. And on the way, I lost my wallet and I lost Matsumoto's address. So when I came home, I told my father, I want to go to Japan. He said, no, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay here and you're going to start. He said, you're going to do your studies. So I was doing automobile engineering. And he said, you're going to study. But you know, for 1.5 years, I was arguing and fighting with my father, saying, I want to go to Japan. He said, no. And one fine day, I sold my car for 10,000 rupees. I had a Renault 4 which my father bought me. And I sold to a friend of mine. I said, you can never tell my father that you bought the car. And a one-way ticket to Japan at that time was 7,000 rupees. And I had another 1,000 rupees, so I had 4,000 rupees. Our Sri Lankan currency was very good at that time. For 4,000 rupees, I got 40,000 yen. And I left Sri Lanka, so I didn't know anyone. I got few contacts in Japan, and I told my friend who bought my car, you had to go and drop me at the airport. And I left, I was 20 plus at the time, so I left Sri Lanka. And I'm a person like, I don't plan things, because sometimes being in countries like ours, when you plan things you can't do because there's nowhere to start with. So from my very young days, I was a person very optimistic, and when I want to do something, I would definitely do it. Not things that is wrong, but what I thought is good for me. So I left and I arrived in Narita. I didn't know where to go. So I called, I had few numbers from Sri Lankans, called them, and they told me you have to go to a hotel, stay at Narita. So I stayed the first night, and out of the 40,000 I had to spend 24,000 yen for the hotel and nothing. So I was left with 16,000 yen, and I didn't know what to do. But while I was calling around, one of my friends said, you come to Osaka and I will let you stay with me, but you have to work for me and I cannot pay you. I said, that's fine, please let me come. So I took a train and went to Osaka. So when I landed in Osaka, I was left with 2,000 yen. And I started working for him for about 2 weeks, and we didn't agree with things. So I didn't have a place to go, so I had about 30,000 yen with me doing part-time job. So I bought a van, a small van with 600cc Subaru, and I lived in that van for 6 months. So I used to do part-time jobs, the public bath, the public toilet, coin laundry, and I had only one meal a day. But you will not believe, I never felt sad, I never felt bad. Every day I was waiting to see the next day. I wanted to wake up early as possible, and I was waiting because I was counting days to become a racer. Anyway, after 6 months I got a better job, and I was trying, I went to, because I came to know that Matsumoto was the champion at that time in Japan. So I told everyone he's a friend of mine. So I said, how could I meet him? So they said, you should go to a circuit. When he's racing, you might be able to see him. So I went about 4 times to circuits, but unfortunately I was not allowed to go into the pits. So I never met him. So I thought, never mind, one fine day I'll meet him. And after a year I started my own business, because I knew motorsports is a very expensive sport. I think the most expensive sport in the world. So doing a job, I could have never achieved what I wanted. So after 1 year I started my own business, exporting cars and motorcycles from Japan. And after a year I bought my first motorcycle. So I went for, that was in 1987, I went for my first race in Japan. So as I'm too optimistic officer, I thought I'm going to beat everyone, you know. And that's the thing that Japanese, I lived there for 25 years, so they are very nice people, they're all good, but they think they're very superior in Asia. So it was like a threat. I was a threat, so I went for the first race and I was the last. So I thought I could beat them, but the level standard was totally different. And there was 2 girls, even they were faster than me. So I realized that day, if you want to win in life, the first thing is you need to know how to lose. You have to accept defeat. So I thought, no, I'm going to win finally. And then, anyway, so, you know, it's a very glamorous sport, so everyone has their trucks, they have their cheering squad, they have everything. And I went with 2 of my friends in a small van. So when we were just loading the motorcycle onto the van, some Japanese riders, they came to me and said, where are you from? You're Asian. I said, yes. And which country? So I said, I'm from Sri Lanka. Then he said, Sri Lanka. And one of the guys said, oh, Sri Lanka, you all have elephants in Sri Lanka. So I said, very proudly, yes. Then they said, you should go and raise elephants. You can't raise bike with us, you can never win race us. So I thought, my God, they are not insulting me, they are insulting my country, Sri Lanka. So I thought I'm going to win everything. And one fine day they will all bow down to Sri Lanka. And that is why, up to date, from that day onwards, I have a big Sri Lankan flag on my car, because I think we all love Sri Lanka. And I was very proud to do that. So then I started winning races. I was the first non-Japanese Asian to win a championship in Japan in 1995, and in 1997 I went to the highest level of Formula 3000, which is the closest to Formula 1, and I was the first non-Japanese Asian to do it. And the Prime Minister of Japan at that time, Mr. Obuchi, he felicitated me. So he invited me to the parliament, and he invited all the media, and he felicitated me. So in his speech, he said, this young man has come from Sri Lanka, lived in a van for 6 months, and see how he has come up in life. So, so after the felicitation, the National Television of Japan, NHK, came to me and said, Dilantha, can we do your documentary? And I said, no. Then they said, why? So the reason was, as I told you, motorsports is a very glamorous sport. So everyone is very wealthy. So they are either their parents are very rich, or they have a lot of sponsors, they have a lot of money. What I was doing was, I was loading motorcycles, I was cleaning them, I was shipping them, I did everything. You know, I used to work 22 hours a day. So I used to clean the bikes, I used to load the bikes, and when I go home, I had to do all the shipping documents. I had to make all the invoices, derations slips, I had to do all that. So I slept for about 14 years. I think I slept only 2 or 3 hours a day. So I didn't want the Japanese to know that how I made my money. So they all thought, my God, this guy is so lucky, the Sri Lanka government is sending him so much money to come and race against us. So I didn't want to deny that, you know. So anyway, so I told him, no, I don't want to do the documentary. But he said, please, Dilantha, you were inspired by a film, and there'll be a lot of Japanese, well as a lot of foreigners are coming into Japan, will be inspired by your story. So at last I thought, okay, let anyone see what I'm doing, and I agreed to do the documentary. And for 3 months they were with me, and they were filming what I was doing, how I was working, how I was finding my money. As you know, every year I had to find about $600,000, which I did it myself alone, and I used to find that money. So anyway, the document, the last shooting was at Fuji circuit, and they said, Dilantha, thank you very much, 3 months we have been with you. So this is the last shooting. So, so it was just after Formula 3000 race, and they said, can you just see the backside of the pits? You have to look towards the back of the pits. So I said, okay. And they started shooting, and I could see someone walking towards me, very familiar. And that was Matsumoto Kemme. So I'm seeing him after 14 years. So NHK found him and told him the story, and they brought him to me. So I couldn't believe it, you know. So we were very emotional. We both hugged each other, and we were both full of tears. And the first thing he asked me, Dilantha, how did you do it? I said, what? He said, I met you 14 years ago in India. You had a very old bike, and you told me one day you're going to be better than me, and you're going to be a champion. So he said, how are you going to do it? So I said, I don't know how I did it. Honestly, I don't know how I did it, because I think we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. So my conscious mind is working and making money, but my subconscious mind is pushing me, driving me to become a racing rider. So I think that's how it happened. So I said, I don't know, but I was, every single second of my life, I was working towards what I wanted to do. So I won many races in Japan, many championships. Then I moved to Asia, and then I was invited to take control of the racing school in Malaysia at the Formula 1 circuit. So I did that for 6 years. And during this time, I realized that I was driving for different teams. So when you drive for different teams, there are team orders. You can't do everything what you want. Sometimes they'll say back, you cannot overtake now, you have to overtake in the next lap. So they try to control you. So I thought I must start my own racing team. So in 2007, I started my own racing team called Dilantha Racing. And from that day onwards, I won mostly every championship I raced and mostly every race because there was no one to control me. It was my own decision. I was the manager and the chief engineer and the driver, and we had a crew. So we went around the world and we won everything. So I have won about 8 championships, first runner-up in about 10 championships. Because when you say a championship, it's throughout the year you have to do about 14 races. And I have about 200 podiums because when you are on podium, our national flag is displayed. And I have won about 60 times, so our national anthem is played when you win. So it's all around the world, the best developed countries. I have raced against everyone. And I was very proud to do that with our Sri Lankan flag on the car. Unfortunately, it's nothing against the government, but they have never supported me. I've done it single-handed, which I'm very proud. And because I think end of the day, what we do all this is for our self-satisfaction, nothing else. So, I was not after money. I was not trying to become a rich person, but I wanted to be rich in my heart. So I wanted to challenge. I always challenge myself. I don't challenge others because you don't know their capacity. They might trick you, They might trick you because they will not show you. But when you challenge yourself, you'll be a better person every day. So my mother always said, so I couldn't fulfill my mother's dream. So later I started doing a lot of charity because I couldn't be a doctor, but at least I could help people. So I did a lot of charity. And so I'm still racing. I'm 60 now, but I still race and I still win. And I still have dreams. I won many European, Asian championships, Japan championships, but I couldn't win a world championship. In a world championship, I was only 3rd. I could finish only 3rd. So I have that dream, so I'm still working hard on it. And from 2017, I'm racing in the European Championships. I'm based here, and I'm very proud to say, for me, there's no other place as Sri Lanka, and there's no other people like Sri Lanka. Because if you ask me, when you compare any other sports person, I think I'm the happiest sports person in the world because I'm a Sri Lankan. Because as you all know, wherever you go, they respect you, they love you for what you do. And you don't get this anywhere in the world because when I still drive for Lamborghini, there's a person called the marketing manager, his name is 𝐶𝐮𝐸𝐼. So he was Michael Schumacher's manager for 6 years. Then he left Ferrari and he was manager for Lamborghini, and he used to come to Sri Lanka a few times. So when he comes, so I take him in my Lamborghini around Colombo, and mostly everyone, they wave at even the police people. So he said, Dilantha, I've been Schumacher's manager for 6 years, not a single policeman has ever waved at him, So I said, that's Sri Lanka, that's how Sri Lanka is, So I love being here, and what I want to tell you all is, there's nothing impossible in life. When you start living your life, you will achieve everything that you desire. So many of us don't live our life. So you should have a dream. And it's difficult, because you think what you do for yourself is a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. When you start doing for others, when you start doing for your country, that's a sacrifice. But whatever you do for yourself is not a sacrifice, because it's for your self-satisfaction. So I think I left Sri Lanka with 4,000 rupees, so you all have a better chance. And there's nothing impossible in life. So I just want to congratulate all of you all, and you're very lucky. Your parents, always never forget your parents, because they are the ones who have given you good life. So you must have gratitude in life always. And there's nothing much to say, but life is such an interesting thing if you handle it right. So I can be a good example for that. And we need more Sri Lankans to go overseas. Just don't only think about being in Sri Lanka, but think bigger, because your life you live only once, and you have to achieve everything you want to. So, and it's not impossible. So you have to work a little bit hard. When I was very young, I don't go for parties, I don't go on trips. I was only concentrating on my dream. And and my friends used to tell me, Dilantha, let's join. I said, no. Oh, we had a great time. I said, okay. But I'm having a great time because I enjoy everything in life. So thank you very much for being here, and I want to congratulate all of you. And aviation is a big industry, I think one of the biggest industries. And since last 35, 40 years I've been traveling at least twice a month. So I know how it is. So I wish you all good luck and God bless you.